To survival trapping. That is in the back corner of the building in Seminar 2. If you want to learn how to trap, Introduction to Survival Trapping. Just started at 1:15, so if you want to learn how to trap, go take that in, teach you how to trap to survive.
Where was I?
Your job.
My job. All right, so trapping year round, I get a lot of experience in the woods. I get to see a lot of cool things, a lot of weird things. Now, who here traps? Has ever trapped? Has ever set a trap? Tim? Okay, good. That's good, because I might have to call you for answers if I don't know. Now, the bottom line is when it comes to survival trapping, or any trapping for that matter, you can't eat what you can't catch, or what you don't catch, correct? If you don't have it, there's no calories there. All right. So what would be some of the advantages to using traps?
Silence.
Absolutely. They're quiet. All right. So depending on the situation you're in, they're quiet. You're not making a lot of noise. All right. They work for you 24 hours a day. It's not like you're out there with the firearm for 12 hours or for 6 hours. They're out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All right. They're easy to conceal. All right. So they're not. You can see that these are some of the ones that we would use in survival situations. They're not very big. They're not too bulky. They weigh a little bit, but that's just the general nature of them. All right, and they can be deadly. So depending on how you set your traps up and how you use them, I've always said that live animals don't spoil. So if you're in the summertime, you may want to use a different type of trap versus another type of trap. So keep the animal alive a little longer. It's not going to spoil on them. What's a disadvantage to trapping in a survival situation?
None.
I couldn't think of any. Not even think about it.
No, they like chew their arm off.
That's really mostly fiction.
Okay.
There have been times where you'll have a raccoon or something in a trap and it goes numb. They'll gnaw on it trying to get the trap off. They're actually trying to chew the trap, not their paw. But other than that, the fact that you hear the animals chew their paws or legs off to get away is from what I can tell, mostly fiction. It's just not really that true that I've seen. I catch a lot of animals. That's something. With me trapping year round, especially just from beavers, I catch between 500 and 700 beaver a year. You throw in the rest of the animals I catch doing either non-target species or doing other jobs for coyotes or whatnot. Okay, I'm catching close to 1,000 a year. Having the right tool for the job. All right, so depending on your situation, of course, and what you're going to be doing, you want to make sure you have the right tool. So snares, for example. How many guys have ever used just single solid wire for a snare? You know what I'm talking about? Like fence wire. It's like the real thin 24 gauge stainless wire. You can get it in bronze or brass also. That's really the wrong thing you want to use. You guys want to use a braided style cable just like what we have here. It took me a while to find it, but the 24 gauge stainless wire, the solid wire like what you can buy at Lowe's to hang your pictures up, things of that nature, has a breaking strength of approximately 18 pounds. Think about that. That's not much, is it? The smallest wire we use is a 3/64 1x19 cable, and it's very similar in size. It has a 400-pound breaking strength. So there's a big difference between solid and stranded cable. And anybody that tells you different, I'll put my 1,000 animals a year up against whatever they catch any day of the week. So 1/16, which is another cable that we use quite a bit for survival snares, that works perfect for your rabbits, has a 480-pound breaking strength. And then 3/32, which is what we use here for our larger game, is almost 1,000-pound breaking strength. It's just between 920 and 980, depending on who manufactures it. So now, at any time, Ray, if you have a question, if I'm not specific enough, ask away. So, knowledge is power, and power means, or could mean, your next meal. So the more you know, the better off you're going to be. Now, trapping, I can sit up here for a week and discuss all the ins and outs of trapping. I can tell you everything you need to know. It's going to take a long time because there's so much to know when it comes to trapping. Now, your fur trapping, it doesn't matter if you're fur trapping, if you're nuisance trapping, or if you're survival trapping. Most of those most of that knowledge and aspects of each one are going to be the same. So what would some of that be? You got to learn to identify what your target species are for that, for your area. So if you're in a certain area that's going to be beavers, okay, you need to identify that. So you need to be able to identify tracks. And I don't see Joe, but he's actually set up a couple of booths over from me. He's got these really nice laminated cards that you can get. So they're laminated, they're waterproof, and they have all kinds of really good information about tracks, scat, how to identify habitat. You get that, and you can keep that in your bag for you, and it's going to really help you out. All right. Finding potential food sources, that's another thing. So learning what certain animals may be eating and identifying that in the area that you're in, you definitely want to do that also. The more you know, the better off you're going to be. All right, now animals, just like people, need water. I could use a glass right now. So finding a water source, the fresher the water, the better. Scat and droppings, learning to identify scat is a big plus for you. Coyote scats can be different from bobcat scats, can be different from raccoon scat. And as bad as this sounds, you can learn to pick through it with a stick, not with your hands, and find out what they're eating to figure out what those food sources may be that way also. And the most important thing to do if you're going to set your traps, you got to set on sign. All right, if there's no animals in a certain area or certain location, you're not going to catch them. You got to set on sign. That holds true for fur trapping, that holds true for nuisance trapping, and that holds true for survival trapping. All right, so most survival situations, you're going to be setting what we call blind sets, or what we affectionately call in the trapping industry Ray Charles. You're not going to use any bait. You're not going to use any lure. You're going to basically try to guess where that animal is going to step or come through at any given time. And it can be challenging, but at the same time, it can be actually pretty easy. All right, so hanging snares. All right, so here's the snare. This is what we use that we manufacture. This is a 48-inch 7x7 construction. The two major wire constructions for snares is 1x19, which is, and this is 7x7. So when we say 7x7 cable, it's 7 strands of 7 strands. Does that make sense? So you got 7 big strands, and each one of those strands, thank you. Each one of those strands is made up of 7 smaller strands. 1x19 is 19 individual strands woven together, just twisted together basically. The 1x19 is very spring-like, it's stiff, it's actually fairly easy to work with, and it loads a nice circle very well. The 7x7 is a little more flexible, a little more limber, and works very well also. All right. Small game deer snares. Now, don't leave here and go snare deer, please. It's against the law for one, but in a survival situation, it's something that you'll need to know. All right, now this snare here will hold a full-size deer. I've caught a few here and there. Luckily, we got them out, so no harm, no foul. But you'd be surprised what you can do with a 3/32 cable, what it'll hold. This is what we use for a lot of our big game, like our coyotes and things. You get into wolves and something will move up to a 1/8 size cable. Let's see here. Buying snares, it can be a little challenging because there's a lot of different people that make them. If you notice on these, we actually load our snares so you got a nice memory built into the back 1/3 or so of that snare, which makes a nice round loop. All right. Some of the other ones you'll see it'll be more of a teardrop or egg shaped, and that's not really what you want. For one, it's going to be harder for that animal to get caught. Two, once he is caught or he has his head through there, that lock is just going to drag across that, and it's not going to want to shut very fast at all. So with a loaded snare, comes there, he bumps it with his chest, it closes very, very fast. The faster that closes, the better off you guys are going to be to eating your next meal. Just like that. They'll come with a swiveled end, most of them. So once they are caught, he can fight and swivel, and that will swivel back and forth. And that's going to help keep the integrity of this cable. Now, depending, of course, on the size of the animal that you may have in the area that you want to eat, go for, is going to depend on the loop size that you use. So beavers, that's about what you want for a beaver, 10 inches wide, 2 inches off the ground, or if it's going to be in water, you can submerge that about halfway into the water. Coyotes, you want something a little bit bigger, you want something about a 12-inch loop and 12 inches off the ground. Now that's just a rule of thumb. So there are going to be some other factors in there that will decide how much you do. So what are the advantages to snares? Who wants to take a guess?
Lightweight.
Very lightweight. I can pack 2 or 3 dozen of these snares, just like this, for the weight of some of these traps like this. So with a trap, you've got the chance to catch one animal at a time for the same weight you can put out 24 or 36 of these, and you've got a considerable amount, better chance of catching your animals. So they're easy to use, they're easy to set up. Once it's just starting out, it's going to be a little awkward setting up your snares, I'm not going to lie to you. But getting out there and practicing, it's just like using any of your other gear, your sidearm or what have you. You practice with it, the more familiar you become with it, the easier it gets. And you can put a lot of snares out in no time flat. I mean, a lot. They're easy to conceal. All right, so in a survival situation, depending on the situation that you're in, let's say you may not want to be found. All right, they're quieter than like we said before, quieter than a gunshot. But you can place this off a trail just a little bit, or maybe 30, 40 feet into a trail, off the main road or something. People walking by are going to be totally oblivious that you've got a trap there. Snares work all in all weather conditions, unless you get 6 feet of snow. Rain, snow, or rain and wind, this thing will be working for you. How many wants to be out there hunting in a bunch of rain and bad weather? This will do it for you. They work on land and water. I said a lot of snares in water. I said a lot more on land. What are some of the disadvantages to using snares? It's an easy one. The snare is a one-time shot. Most of the time, you catch something in that snare, the cable's going to be kinked up and worked over enough to where it's not going to be used again. However, you can cut the cable up, take your hardware off, and put on new cable and use the same hardware several times. And here again, it depends on how many you catch or how hard they get worked. This Snare Lock will eventually wear out and you'll have to replace it. Same with these other pieces. So think about that. Conabers, the body grip traps. Think of this as a mouse trap that you're going to use vertically. Okay, you're not going to lay it on the ground. Now this is small enough you can set this with your hands instead of having to use a setter. The bigger setters, this is a 110 Conabear, the 330s are about twice as big this way and twice as long that way. They're 10 inches by 10 inches, most of them. You'll need a tool to set those. All right. So you can set this trap with your hands. And here again, that's the trigger system there. I like spreading that apart just a little bit. To set these, you're going to compress your springs just a little bit like that. You're going to grab the jaws the rest of the way and finish opening it up like that. Can everybody see that? Just like that. Like that. You can flip that trigger right over. And that's a loaded Conabear. Now, I got $5 for a person who wants to put their hand in. Nobody? I wouldn't either. This is considered a kill trap, so whatever goes through there will hopefully kill it. It goes right across the back of their neck, breaking their neck. That's how those work. Somebody want to try setting it?
I have a question. How do you spell that? What it's called?
Conabear?
Conabear?
Yeah, Conibear.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, they're also known as body grip traps. Just like that. So these are a little heavier, they're a little bulkier, but you can use them over and over and over again. Much more times than you can the cable on a snare. So that's a consideration to think about. That's definitely an advantage. Now eventually, this wire trigger here may break, or the spring may get weaker or something to that effect, in which case you'll have to replace that or figure out how to fix it out in the field. But but taken as a whole, you can use it many, many, many times over. Disadvantages, of course, they are a little bulkier. They do have some weight to it. So you won't be able to carry quite as many of these as you can the snares. But here again, they are very, very effective tools to use.
And how exactly is that set? I mean, set like on the ground once you get it set?
Okay, good question. You get it set. Now, it'll set just like that. But you're going to want to have, you can put some limbs or some sticks and a 45 on each side and put them in between the jaws just like that to help support it. There are brackets available, and we have those available at the booth that you can use to support these that allow you to put these on the side of a tree vertically or upside down even if you like. It opens up a lot more options for you when it comes to setting these. It's a very easy tool to use. I mean, once you try it and get it set once, you'll be able to do it in your sleep. I promise. It's pretty easy. All right. Footholds. Now these will lay flat just like you see here, so they do pack down kind of nice. The footholds are here again. They are a little more bulky, but they work very, very well. I got two different types. All right. This is what we call a coil spring trap. We've got two sets of coils here and here. Now you can get them in a 4-coil where they got 4 coils to them. This is something that you've probably seen in some of the like the Jeremiah Johnson or some other trapping shows, movies. This is what you consider a long spring trap. And it's pretty self-explanatory why they call that a long spring trap. The coil springs, for most intents and purposes in the trapping industry, are more used or widely used than the long springs. And these set fairly easy. You got to press the levers down, see the jaws fall right down. This is called the dog. You got that falls right over there and attaches to the latch there, and that's set just like that. So that's a loaded. This is a dupe trap. It's more of an economical style trap. This is big enough. This will hold foxes, coons, possums. Some guys will hold a coyote in it occasionally. Now these are made to hold. You know, you think of these traps like this back in the day where they've had the teeth. You know, the big bear type traps with the teeth on the jaws, and the teeth have been outlawed for hundreds of years now. So, and then you got the long springs, and these work essentially the same way, except you got to compress both of those. Now that jaw will eventually lay flat, but there's not as far as durability and longevity, the long spring is what you want to go with. It's going to just last you a little longer than these other traps do. Now these here, I told them I was going to stick my hand in and let it go off, just to show you that in case it's going to happen. You use traps long enough, it's going to happen to you. All right, so these are made to hold and not hurt. I've had my hand stuck in, this is a Duke 1.5. I've had them in number 5s. They open up to about this big. They're for large animals, and it hurts a little bit, but you're going to come out with maybe a bruised knuckle and you're good to go. So, all right, now the next thing is, you can buy all this stuff till you're blue in the face. If you don't use it and you don't practice with it, it's not going to do you any good. And waiting till something happens to start using it is the wrong time. It really, really is. And I can't emphasize that enough. Getting to know your gear and getting to know how to use it and set it in different ways is very, very important. Getting to know the animals in your area, or the areas that you're going to be in, their habits, the food sources, water sources, things like that, very, very important. That's going to be the difference between you eating and not eating most of the times. All right. So now, questions. Who's got questions? I know there's plenty of questions.
What animals that you trap are good to eat?
About any of them. A lot of guys will actually eat. In the fur industry, they eat bobcats a lot. They're pretty tasty. Raccoons very tasty. beaver meat is actually very, very tasty. It's a dark red meat. Tastes, you know, the thing about it, beavers eat the same thing as cattle. You know, they're vegetarians, so their meat has a dark red consistency, just like a steak does, and it has a beef-like taste to it. Yes, sir.
On the snares, how much of the hardware on the snares could you know, make or fashion yourself?
Really, you could. What he asked was, is how much can we make ourselves? If you've got a roll of 9-gauge wire, you can make your own spindles very easy. That's a washer on the end of that to help with the snaring, so you can have, you know, just any washer that'll fit on there would work. That's a Polymer Support. Now you don't. This is one we add to all of our snares. You don't have to have that on there. All right. I don't have my. You can actually bend the end of this right here into the shape of a W, and actually just weave this cable. And I should have done this before, but weave that cable in and out of there a couple of times, just like that, and it's going to hold that just right without having to use a support. So that's optional. Don't think you have to have that. And then the lock. I've seen guys make locks out of Coke can tabs, different little pieces of metal, washers. You can take a washer and bend a 90-degree into it and drill a small hole on each end and feed your cable through there. So you can make your own equipment. You absolutely can. I'd much rather sell it to you if you wanted it, but yeah, if you had to, you could definitely make all of the equipment that you need to make your snares. This particular snare lock, there's probably 50 different styles of locks you can get to use on these. This is a non-relaxing lock, so what that means is once it's tightened down against that animal's neck or body, it don't back off. It'll slide this way, but it won't slide that way until you give it the leverage that it needs to slide back. So there's two categories essentially. You've got non-relaxing locks like this, and then you have relaxing locks. Some states for the fur industry require by law you have to have a relaxing lock. Okay. But yeah, you know, you can definitely make your own stuff. What else?
How often do you use lures, or do you just rely on the pathways?
Well, that depends. All right, so for fur trapping, when I'm using the footholds, I use lure. The snares and the conibears, most of the time they're blind set, so there's no lure or bait used whatsoever. You're predicting where that animal will be coming through on trails or on roads or where have you, and you're setting them. So they're just minding their own business. They're bebopping through the woods, and next thing you know, you're in the snare. Now, one thing, you know, I mentioned about snares and these traps. They're easy to conceal while they're set, right? So when an animal's on this trail and he's getting ready to come into an opening, the closer he gets to that opening, or maybe a dirt road or something, the more aware he's going to start getting as he gets closer, because he's going to basically, you know, when he's further back, he's just kind of doing his thing, and that's where you really want to put your traps. Don't put them right there. Don't be lazy and put them right there off the side of the road. Walk in there 30, 40, 50 feet and set your traps, because he's going to be a lot less prone to see it or to be aware that there's something wrong over there. Now, you may have refusals, is what we call it. He may walk right up to that, stop, turn around, and go around it. Some animals are just like that. All right. Most of the time, they don't know what this is. They don't know what this is. They don't know what that is. They know it's there. They don't know what it is, and then you catch them.
Here's my question, because I've seen some of those in the woods behind my house.
Okay.
Worst case scenario, I'm walking through the woods to get to where I need to go to avoid main roads, and I step in one of those, or he steps in one of those, and I'm not familiar with whichever type of trap it is, and there's no hospitals. How do I...
If you step on, now if it's a smaller trap like this,
Or a bigger one.
or even a
What do
bigger
I
one,
do?
most of the time you just pull your foot out.
Okay.
I mean, would you be barefoot? Do you walk out there barefoot? If you're wearing shoes of any sort, sandals, what have you, most of the time, and I'll show you real quick. In fact, that's how a lot of times I set my traps off when I'm pulling them up when I'm done for the area. So you got your trap, it's sitting in the ground a little bit, and you step on it, all right? It didn't do anything to us. Our feet are just too big for these type of traps. Now there are bigger ones, like the ones I use for beaver trapping, same thing. All right, now if he steps in it, it may be a little different. All right, now if he steps in something like this, then you'd probably be okay. You get a large beaver trap sitting there. It's got a 7.5 or an 8.5 inch opening after those jaws are open. All right, it may get a split, but if it's on the shoe portion of it, I don't think it's going to hurt.
Can you pry those bigger ones open with your hands?
Yeah, what you do is you just get them on the ground and use your weight to push down on these levers.
Alright.
Now they do make setters for certain traps that I use sometimes depending on where I'm at. And the same with these. You just got to push down on these springs, just like that, and that's going to open those jaws up, so you can open them up. It can be a little confusing. Like I get phone calls, hey, you got something in your trap? How do I get it out? I usually tell them, don't get it out. Yes, sir.
What's the percent kill in the snares?
Percent? Well, that's going to have a lot to do with your population density, the effectiveness and the skill of the trapper, weather conditions. For somebody that's just getting into it, I would probably say 1 in 10. Somebody like me that does it year round, 1 in 4. But you know, there's so many variables to that answer to that question that it really just depends. So I would consider, you know, keep in mind for some of you guys, probably 1 in 10 would be a good number to go with. So for every 10 traps or 10 snares you have out, you would expect maybe 1 catch.
Once it's caught,
Oh, once it's caught, the kill rate? Okay, well here again, it depends on that also. If you get a good solid neck catch, sometimes the animal will be expired when you get there. If he manages to get halfway through that loop and you get a body catch, so it's right across his chest here, most times they'll be alive when you get there. If you're using a non-relaxing lock like this, of course it tightens down and tightens down and tightens down. The more they fight, the tighter it gets. Now we do manufacture some snares that we call kill snares. These are made and designed to kill animals. All right, so they'll be similar to this. They'll actually have a spring on here, so even once the animal tightens down and it's triggered, it's tightened down, that spring is compressed, and it'll keep 40 to 50 pounds of pressure on that lock right there. So if you get a good neck catch, that animal will be expired in probably less than a minute. So here again, there's really not a single right answer to that question, but it just really just depends. I will tell you this: domestic animals tend not to fight nearly as hard or at all. So if you catch somebody's dog or their pet or something, and I've done this many times. Like I go out to Mississippi and snare, I'll have dogs sitting there right around the neck, caught just as plain as day, and they think it's a leash, and they'll sit right there till you let them out.
Yep.
I've never had a domestic animal dead in a snare. Not once. Yes, sir.
Quick question, what kind of snare would you want to get if you just want to catch the animal, not on them? Like what specific spring did you need?
You can use the same setup as this. I would maybe change the lock on it. Like I said, this is a non-relaxing lock.
Right, what kind of lock would you want?
You will probably want something what we refer to as an ADC washer lock. ADC stands for animal damage control, or another name is 180-degree bend type washer lock. So if you imagine just a round washer, the top third of it is bent 180 degrees over, and that when that lock is used, that snare is used, or it acts a lot like those choke chains or choke collars that you put on the dog. The second they quit fighting it, it completely relaxes, but not enough to let them out.
Right.
Hopefully. So that would be the one I would consider for that. That's going to be the most animal
better.
friendly.
It'd be better to experiment yourself. I feel like if you're going to take the animal to the field,
Yeah.
rather than torturing them with the snare, I'd rather do it myself.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Where's a good place to go to find the different laws for each state or county?
Best thing is just the internet. You can a lot of times your states will have trappers associations, and those will have links to the state laws and regulations for the snares and for the traps. Where you can just let's say you're in Idaho and just Google Idaho trapping regulations, and which we have to do quite a bit because we'll get customers that say I need this snare made for my state, and they don't know quite what they need, but they know they want snares, and so we'll have to custom make some snares according to their laws. So that's really the best thing to do is to do that. Don't ask somebody and then they give you bad information, or wrong information. Not deliberately, of course, but sometimes they don't know or they think they know and they tell you the wrong stuff. The best thing to do is just look it up yourself and figure it, And you can always call the game commissions for each state too, and they should have that information available. Yes, sir.
If you had to go for one that was common and easy to catch, what would you, for food, would it be squirrels, rabbits, what's
There's plenty of squirrels, there's plenty of rabbits. Raccoons would be another one. You get some good meat off those if you're around enough water. Like where I live in southeast Georgia, and one thing we have plenty of down there are beavers. So that would be something else to consider. And it goes back to kind of learning your areas. You may have more beavers in your area than I do in mine, or bobcats, or what have you. Finding out what you have available for you, and then maybe curtail that. Your kit or whatever you want to get to that area.
What's the best for an armadillo?
Armadillos. If you want to use a cage style type trap for that, I've actually got some specialized wooden box type traps that has two doors that come straight up like this. They come in there, they'll bump the trigger with their shell, and both sides will come down, and then you got your armadillo. Most of the time you have to funnel that animal into that because there's really no bait or lure available for those animals. So when I say funnel, you ever seen those landscaping cloth or short fences you can use them? Yeah, just because they're just they're blind anyway.
Yep.
So you just want to have like a V type going straight into that trap, and then there you go. They'll dig the mess out of your yard. Yeah, I figured that would. Yes. Okay.
Good question.
In fur trapping, that's going to vary from state to state. Georgia requires a 24-hour trap check, so I have to check my traps once daily. So every day, and I tell my customers that I will be here every day to check my traps. Now, in a survival situation, I would check them twice a day, once in the mornings, once in the evenings. All right. Now, as far as how productive they're going to be in that certain location or how effective they're going to be, if you've got enough traps, I'd let it sit for several days, because you just don't know. I've ran a trap line and I've caught animals in the traps where I never thought I'd have an animal. Talking about the effectiveness of certain, I'll make a perfect set for a coyote, and I'll have three of them right in a row, and that third one will just look the worst, like a 3-year-old made it. And it seems like to me, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like that one that looked the worst, the one I got sloppy with sometimes, is the one that catches the animal. But it varies, but to answer your question, yeah, I'd let it sit several days, up to a week maybe. It just depends. I've let traps set and get tiresome. My father-in-law, he lives across the street from me. He built these nice, great, big ponds and stocked them with fish. And it wasn't a year before otters moved in. And those otters, they eat 6-7 times a day, and they were just wiping out the fish in his pond. He spent all this money on it. And I had those traps set probably 3 weeks before I finally caught them. It's just one of those things. So as long I'd leave them there as long as you can. Now, if you happen to come across another area where it's just begging for a trap, go ahead and move one over there to it. But the longer it sits there, the better chance you have of catching something. What else? Who wants to see me put my hand back in the trap?
Can you identify? Oh, sorry.
No,
This is kind of going into a different category, but for instance, like if you have raccoons that you want to catch and eat, to be concerned with rabies or things like that, how would you approach that kind of situation if you're unsure if it's safe?
Okay, that's actually a really good question. I didn't think about talking about that, but you can. Let's talk about that. And let's talk about parasites too, disease. All right. So when I'm skinning an animal, I wear gloves. I wear latex gloves. And you may not have those available to you. All right. So one thing you want to make sure of, if you're having to do this barehanded, is make sure you don't have any cuts or gashes or nicks on your hands. Because if you do, you just increase your chances of catching something. I have skinned out possums where you take that skin down and there's a little cluster of worms right underneath the skin. But that's why we cook our food too, to get rid of the parasites, to kill the germs and kill the bacteria and stuff. Rabies, if you're suspicious that the animal may have rabies, I'd consider twice before eating it. I've never heard of anybody contracting rabies from eating one. Tim, have you?
No, I am not.
But here again, that's why we cook our food. Cook it well. You get done processing the animal, wash your hands off as soon as you can. Hopefully, if you got some germ killer or some soap, get it and use it and go about your business. But now,
Say then, sorry, would you say that cooking the animal then, if it has rabies, would that make it safe to eat then, if you cook it thoroughly?
well, I would consider that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell you, yeah, go ahead and do it, and then
Right.
you come down with the plague or something. That's not be in trouble. But yeah, that's why we cook our food, right? I mean, to kill that type of thing. And now, there's other diseases like distemper, stuff that's transmittable from your animals to wild animals and back and forth, so that you got to be aware of. And educating yourself on that is also would be very productive, something to think about. But yeah,
The liver's a good indicator if there's any spotty or discoloration on the liver of the animal.
yeah, I didn't think about that. The liver, once you take those organs out, if that liver's a nice, bright, shiny, dark color, most likely that animal's in very good health. But if it's faded or spotted or what have you, there may be something wrong with it. Now, as far as dispatching the animal while it's still in the trap, and you think there might be something wrong with it, distance is a beautiful thing. So it doesn't, you can get a pretty good stick, in length, and you can hit it over the head that way. Just to keep yourself away from that animal until it is dispatched. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Can you tell, if you can't find traps or scat, can you tell sort of what the animal is by how big the hole is they're digging?
Not really. Generally the smaller the hole, the smaller the animal, but, I've seen, and Tim and I just talked about this earlier, when it comes to gaining access to certain areas, coyotes will go through a hole this big. So, I get a lot of phone calls from private ranches out of Texas. These ranches raise exotic animals, and they've got trappers out there they need gear, so they're asking about certain types of snares to use. And they were just amazed at how small a hole that these full-grown coyotes, 25, 30-pound coyotes, are going through. I mean, you think a house cat wouldn't fit through them, but these large animals are actually getting through there. So. Usually, if you got your bigger holes, especially if they're oblong shaped, they're going to be tortoises and turtles and things of that nature. But you can maybe look in there a little bit and see if you can find any fur or any other signs too. Okay. What else?
How would you go about dispatching an animal in both types of traps?
Okay. All right. For fur trapping, I use a 22. All right. Now, if I want them to stay quiet, most of the time, like say you got a raccoon. You got a raccoon in this trap right here, and you've got to dispatch them. If it was going to be me, I'd bop them on the head just a little bit to knock them silly. I take that, I usually keep an axe handle with me, something of that nature, a nice thick stick. I'll put it across the back of his neck with his chin on the ground, pull up on his back feet, and break his neck. It's very fast, it's very painless. He's not feeling any discomfort, and you've got your meal.
Is that how you do rabbits too?
Yeah, you can hold them by their back legs and hit them right in the back of the head. It breaks their neck. So they might kick for a second or two, but rabbits same way. What else? Any other questions?
I'm surprised that Texas calls, did you say Georgia? I'm surprised it's not the other way around.
Why?
Texas does a lot of trapping.
Oh yeah.
And big, huge ranches that hire trappers.
Yeah, they do it. I don't know. Sometimes I guess my number and name gets passed on from place to place. I don't know. But yeah, we get a lot of phone calls from different places, including Texas, Idaho, Utah, places of that nature.
You just named all 3 states I live in.
Well, that's all. No more questions. That's all I've got.
If somebody wanted to get started in snaring, what would you recommend? How many snares and what kind of snares to buy?
Okay, good question. Now, if it's just you as an individual, I'd say a minimum 12 snares, just a 12 pack of snares to keep with you. They're so light, they're so compact. There's no reason for you really not to have a 12 pack of snares. All right. Ideally, 2 or 3 dozen snares would be much better. Now, if you've got a family, let's say you've got a family of 4, I'd say a minimum of 12 snares per family member. All right. Now, don't put all your eggs in one cart. Keep, you know, if they've all got packs and things of that nature, put a dozen snares in each person's pack. All right. So if you lose one, you still got 3 more dozen, or however many you have.
When you're fur trapping hot summer, what do you do to maintain the integrity of the fur until you can carry a cooler with you? What do you do with it?
For survival or for?
No, just for trapping.
For fur.
Okay.
Fur.
In the summertime, okay, most of your fur trapping is going to take place in fall, winter, and early spring. So usually the fur sticker, it's prime, and it's cold enough outside, you can put it in the back of your truck or something for several hours and it should be okay. The fur is not very good in the summertime. It's thin, it's warm, and there's no fur season in the summer that I'm aware of in any state. Okay, so but now in the nuisance aspect of trapping, let's say Georgia, for example, Georgia has state law that says I can't keep that fur for nuisance trapping. Okay, so I'm hired to take care of the beaver problem. I can't keep that fur, and it's going to be worthless anyway. So.
What do you do with the animals? You can't keep the fur.
Well, depending on the animals, all right. Sometimes we'll process the meat.
Okay. So you can eat it, you just can't keep the fur.
Well, yeah, we make bait with it, but yeah. Okay. The other stuff, you know, different animals, you know. Each state's gonna be a little different. Georgia doesn't recognize beavers as a fur bearer; they consider them a nuisance.
Oh.
Same as coyotes. So those laws for those 2 animals be a little bit different than say a bobcat or an otter, where you know. So I couldn't keep anything off those animals, period, during the summer when I'm nuisance trapping. I've got to discard the animals.
And that's the same whether you're doing it for personal or for employment? It's the same, you just can't keep it?
Well, if it's during the fur season, like during the winter time, I can harvest the fur. I can harvest the glands. I can harvest whatever. All right. But during the summer, when fur season is out, I cannot.
So then you just throw it away?
I just throw it away.
And you don't have to prove that you threw it away?
Not aware of it. But here, you know, now Alabama's laws may be different. Mississippi's laws may be different, and that's where doing that research on the internet is going to come in very handy.
Right. So now if you're if you're fur trapping, how do you process your fur? After you skin it, what do you do with the fur?
Okay, usually I've got too much to do with that. You know, I might come home with, say, a dozen beavers. I've got enough time that night to skin them, and that's it. I'm not going to have time to flesh them out and dry them. So I'll roll them up, first side out. All right, and then I put them in a they make 2.5 gallon Ziploc freezer bag. I put them in that, and I put them in the freezer until I can get to them.
And then do you do the salt cure and stretch them and all
Well,
that stuff?
no, what I'll do is once I have the time, I'll take them out of the freezer the day ahead of time I need them, so they'll thaw out. I've got a fleshing beam that I lay the fur over, skin side up, and I have a fleshing knife, and I just go through and I cut and scrape all the gristle, the fat, any meat that may be on it. All that gets scraped off, and then I stretch it. It goes on another. I'm talking about beaver pelts at this point. So I have a board that I attack it to, and then I just dry it off that. But because there's no flesh or meat or fat on there, it'll dry hard and stiff, and then it just gets folded up, and I take it to the fur line.
Oh, so you don't use salt or anything, you just aim.
Just the air.
And it's a solid board, not a frame.
Right. Yeah, you can use a frame. There are beaver frames, beaver hoops you can use. There's several different ways. I use board. My preference. We use Morox. A little bit sometimes behind the ears of certain animals like your coons and stuff. And in fact, once I take a coon skin off the stretcher, I'll wrap it in newspaper and stack them just like this. All right, two here and then 2 this way, so on. And that newspaper helps absorb a lot of the oil out of the skin. Keeping a small fan on it, blowing the air circulating is very important too.
And Georgia has the fur processor?
We actually have fur buyers that come to us in certain times of the year in certain locations, and we just take it to that, and they count what we have, and then they go off to NAFTA or the different other places, and they're auctioned off. I've had some of my furs auctioned off in Russia, Greece, different places, and fur buyers from around the world come to that place to buy. Now, is there a difference between northern fur, let's say up in Maine, and fur in South Georgia?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a big difference. There's even a big difference between fur and let's say in Maine compared to what they have in Canada and Alaska. So the fur down here tends to be a lot thinner, not as good as quality as what you have up north. Not as good. Now, the other thing, how many have watched YouTube videos on how to trap? There's a lot of YouTube videos out there. And a lot of it is junk. You get a guy that's caught a couple of coyotes here and a raccoon here. He's a self-proclaimed expert. So be very, very careful who you pick to watch and who you follow. I've got Tim here. He's a meat trapper on YouTube. He's got a couple of different channels. That's one I would definitely watch. His information is very precise, very exact, and he's not afraid. If you got a question on YouTube, you just message him right there, and he'll get back with you.
What is that channel's name?
Meat Trapper.
Yep.
A lot of a good source of information there. Absolutely. And not to say that there's not everything on there is junk. I'm not saying that, but just be careful. There are some very good informational type videos on YouTube, but there's a lot of misinformation on there also, and it's going to be up to you to kind of decipher between the two.
Do you ever have a market for javelina or wild boar hair?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm sure there is one out there, but it's not one that I'm familiar with.
You just stick with just birds.
I stay with the smaller critters, yeah.
How do you go about anchoring just like a regular snare?
Okay, yeah, I didn't cover that, did I? So there's a couple of ways you can anchor these snares. The way these swivels are built, you can use a stake to stake it down in the ground with. One of the ones that we make are called the disposable earth anchors. They have another, it's just, they've got a tip to it, and it comes up with a cable on it just like that. You can attach it to here. Well, let's say you don't have that. Could you stake this down? Get a branch. I'd probably say 3/4 of an inch. However big of a branch you can shove down in here. That's going to have a couple of limbs coming off there, and have those limbs go over the top of this. So it's kind of holding that down there. And I've actually gone out on beaver jobs and walked all the way and forgot my stakes for my grounding rigs that I use, and I've actually used branches to stake down my grounding rods for beavers. So, and they work very well. And just make sure it's big enough to hold take the use that we're going to go through.
Do you ever make your bait?
Oh yeah.
And if the stinkier the better?
No.
Oh, really?
No.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, Seminar 1, just in process, food storage. How to select what is right for you. Food storage, Seminar 1, back right corner. How to select what's right for you. Craig Douglas, from 2 to 3. Seminar 1, food storage, how to select what is right for you, and that is in the back right corner. Seminar 1, just getting started.
Now when it comes to fur trapping, certain animals like certain smells. And a lot of it does just stink to most people. But a lot of your canine lures and baits are tailored for canines. Bobcats or cats, mountain lions, what have you. If you want to use a lot of rotted down type meats or things like that, you're going to catch, what we refer in the trapping industry as trash animals, or trash, like the possums or something. For fur, that is. Survival situation may not be such a bad idea. But certain animals are attracted to certain odors. I talked about beaver just a little while ago. Beavers have pasture glands in them. Right? They're these two big sacs that they use to mark their territory with. Most of your predators are very attracted to that odor. It's kind of, and depending on where you are, it's kind of got a burnt leather smell to me. And it's used widely in the trapping industry in different baits and lures. So you can harvest one animal, use some of the parts of that animal to catch other animals. And if you want it to stink a little bit, leave it in the sun a little bit. Keep the bugs off it. You can put it in a container, let it rot down a little bit, and then start using that.
What would attract coyotes the most?
Well, here it just depends.
Yeah.
What attracts coyotes the most? That castor works very well. I use a lot of beaver meat in our baits that we make. You can tame them down, age the meat a little bit so it's got a stronger odor to it. That usually works. Bobcat bait and lure works great as a curiosity type lure for coyotes. They're attracted to the same thing also.
When you have a coyote pack moving from point A to point B and they do it every night, if you set traps there, do they eat on the trail or do they eat where they come from and where they're going and just run really fast?
They're just going to eat wherever they find food. Yeah.
Okay.
So if they're pretty consistent, going from A to B like that every night, you can set something in the middle there, and you'd have a pretty good chance of having something the next day. All right. Well, if that's it, guys, I appreciate you sitting through me mumbling up here like this. But and if you guys have any more questions or anything, we got a booth set up here. Got business cards sitting out there, give me a call. If I don't answer, leave me a message. I'll call you back. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Do most states hire trappers for trapping or?
Well,